Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome participants to the virtual planning board meeting of March 21st. Just a call to order. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Ms. Delicio.
Here.
Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Gilbert.
Here.
Mr. Olney is not with us. Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Okay, looks like we have a quorum tonight. I'd like to remind all board members to be asked to recognize to the chair if they wish to speak. This meeting is being recorded, and at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Sarah Creighton for the discussion items. Sarah.
Yep, thanks. Just really before we start, I want to just remind everybody that we have a site walk tomorrow at 5:30 at Harold Street, if you can make it. And also, Sue, do you just want to say a word about the Board of Selectmen meeting tomorrow night?
There is the Board of Selectmen will be holding the community forum on the 40A regulations, law and regulations, starting at 6:30. So that will be a presentation, maybe 20 minutes or so, questions and answers, and I hope lots of folks will attend.
Okay, great. And then for anyone who's here looking for the public hearing for LCD changes, or this is not a public hearing tonight, you're welcome to be here, and but we're not taking public comment tonight. We are and we're not talking about the at least in any making any changes to the LCD zoning. There will be a public hearing on that next Monday at 7 p.m. So this is a working session. So the agenda for tonight is to talk about a few different new things. I'm going to start actually out of order and talk about some of the issues on previous zoning changes. I'm hoping we can get through that pretty quickly. Gary had asked while we were waiting about those, and I went back through all the notes predominantly the January 31st meeting that we had, and we had put a bunch of things in yellow to come back to because we were tired and we didn't. So I think we can just resolve some of these. Some of them are just, you know, we may have differences of opinion. We just need to figure out what language we want in the proposed draft language that would then be reviewed by public hearing. We can then discuss it further after the public weighs in. This is not a final vote by any means, but I really want to get the stuff up on the website. And with all these, a few of these like unresolved things, it's not terribly productive to have lots of colors and that kind of thing. So does that make sense to everybody? Without further ado, I will just share my screen here. And hopefully we can get through these. And what I'd like to do is have, is Mark Bobrowski coming tonight, Sue? Did you hear from him? Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My mute is down below my ribbon for some reason. No, I did not invite him. I did not know that he was anticipated to be here.
Oh, okay. Thought we talked about that last time. Okay, no problem. So we may have to refer some of these to him, but I don't think they're that pending. So the first one, these are all in sections 1 through 3. And I think we can then get a, so I put in red what I'm hoping we can do tonight. And I think this is a kind of a, I know there are two differences of opinion about whether the purpose of the zoning includes implement the recommendations of the town's master plan as adopted by the planning board. So I'll take a motion to include or not include that, whichever. I think an affirmative vote would be helpful because otherwise we have to.
So I'll move that we adopt the implementing the recommendations of the town master plan as adopted by the planning board as one of the sections of 1.1.
Okay, great, thank you. Discussion, oh, second,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, hearing none. I think we can do do we have to take a roll call vote, Ron, on every one of these things?
Yes.
Gosh, okay, Ron,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
is that yes? Gary,
Yes.
Mary,
No.
Laura,
Yes.
Christina,
No.
Chris?
Yes,
And I vote yes. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one. I see that Steve Rosenthal has just joined. Just to remind you that Mr. Rosenthal, this is not a public hearing. And if you're looking for the LCD hearing, that will be next Monday. So, okay, then the section 2, we had a bunch of questions on definitions. And as Chris and I went through this, we suggest adding at the start of the definition section, something that says along the lines of the following definitions shall apply. And when definitions in section 2 are in conflict with other sections of the bylaw, the definitions in the relevant other sections shall apply. And that's because we're still in a hodgepodge state of affairs here. And we may find that we have failed to include definitions or there's some sort of a conflict. So that was our proposal. Maybe I can get a motion to adopt that language and then we can discuss it. Chris?
sure, I'll move that we adopt the language that when a definitions in section 2 are in conflict with other sections of the bylaw, the definitions in the relevant other sections shall apply.
Okay, second.
I'll
Gary?
second that.
Okay, Ron, thank you. Okay, just any discussion or concerns? And there may be a better way to word this but Laura, go ahead.
Just wondering about the use of in conflict. If this was another sort of contract document, one would supersede the other. So are we trying to say that the other relevant sections supersede, or that if we missed putting it in section 2, that they shall apply? I think we just want clarity on whether one definition supersedes or not.
I think my thought was that the definitions in the body would supersede.
Okay, so we could either say that
Sections shall supersede.
that seems okay. Or we could also just say if they're not in section 2, the other definitions will apply. Sort of two ways of saying not quite the same thing. I don't feel strongly.
Okay. And maybe we can maybe if we can get the latitude, I think everybody's in agreement. Well, that we
Mary has her hand. Mary.
Go ahead, Mary.
I might have missed it, but I don't recall seeing a final draft of the definitions that were kept in and the ones taken out.
The section, the material on the in that file is the latest, the ones that I referred to you in the memo. So that is the latest. Well, this is again for the for public hearing. I don't think we took we didn't agree to take anything out except for pervious surface or something. So I think it's the same.
I thought we had agreed and Mark Bobrowski concurred that we should take out anything that we don't actually have.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We did not resolve, that's on the unresolved issues. So senior housing, for example.
No, I mean, just for definition's sake, for like, drive-through and things like that.
Okay, let's table that and we can certainly, as we move forward with the next step, let's revisit that.
So this won't be going, this will,
No,
I guess I'm unclear if this is going to be at a public forum before we discuss again.
I don't think it has to be, but I want to, so I want to get it on the website, but that doesn't have to be the last time before the public forum. Okay,
Mary, are you asking about this paragraph that we're talking about or something else?
I think she
What is
said,
it? Asking about the whole definition section.
Oh, okay.
yeah, let's stick with it. Thank you. Let's try to stick with this. Any other discussion on this topic? We may have to wordsmith it a little bit more, but okay.
I would restate the motion now that we've changed the language for clarity for Sharon. You
Yep.
know, let's you know, we've seconded a motion, and I suggest we,
Amend it, right?
I'll
you-
accept the revision.
Thank you. Ron, you accept the revision?
yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Chris,
Yes,
Laura,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Tina,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay. Contractor's yard, this issue about note, this is in 4.3.3. I'm gonna delete that note right now because Chris is looking at that. That's a different topic. So this was a discussion we had about, this is under definitions, not under permitted use, not under, it makes no statement about whether it's permitted or not permitted and whether or not you need to have the 2 acres. That's the 4.3. So this is just a definition. Is there any edits to this? Might be able to do some of these together.
actually, I did check on the definition of a contractor's yard. And it's actually the building center in Gloucester is a contractor's yard. So it can include stores, retail, storage of lumber, building supplies.
But then retail or storage or retail kinds of things would have to be allowed in the district, the relevant district, if that was the case.
Yeah, it's just that the definition should probably include a contract. I mean, all those things, because that's the legal definition.
Legal?
We had,
Yeah, that's what I looked up was the legal definition of a contractor's yard.
But I think legal can be whatever you decide it is in your document.
Well,
If you
I guess that's
create
true,
a
yes.
regulation.
I guess we
think
could say
it's
for the
gonna refer to private.
purposes of this bylaw.
Well, that's what,
Yes.
that they're in the definition. So by definition, fine. That's redundant. That would be, it's in the definition section of our zoning bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me just look and see what the next one is. Yeah, the next one's dicey. So let's,
was there an
we-
issue on a refrigerated truck being parked in a yard that had the motor
Remember-
running all night? Was that something that someone brought up at one
Yeah.
point?
that was an issue around that's also in this 4.3.3 about what's allowed for commercial vehicles. So that's not a definition
Okay.
question. So,
Right.
can we,
So do we allow contractor's yard somewhere? That's my next
yeah,
question.
that's in that 4.3.3 is that by right if they have 2 acres. So it's a different question than the definition of a contractor's yard. Again, this isn't final. This is getting it to the public or we can revisit again once you look at it again, but getting it to the website.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to do is get this to the website. I'm going to suggest that maybe we don't have to vote all of these. I'm going to ask, is there any objection to this language at this point? Ask Laura.
One word, and it might be a nuance, wheeled or tracked, TRACK.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any objections to this? I don't think we have to vote every one of these because, okay, hearing none, I'm going to say, okay. All right, this one is a little bit, Chris, I think somebody brought this up last time, the dwelling.
So just going back on that last one, Sharon, so Sarah, so Sharon, there's no motion on this, so
Right.
we're just including it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying we've got,
Okay.
I'll put consensus. And I'm gonna actually add to the list of things to come back with is look at the where contractor yards are allowed. Okay. Sorry I didn't know how else to do this. So the question became single family dwelling, and this is our definition. Single family dwelling is a dwelling for occupancy by one family. And that came up last time. Family comes up a couple of times. So Chris and I also in this, then in the subdivision rules, let's see if I can show those two together. This is the proposed definition that we got from that draft 8. A privately or publicly owned permanent structure containing a dwelling unit or dwelling units, and the term family, one family and so forth, does not include hotel, lodging, hospital membership, etc. And then so Chris and I suggested that we have a definition of a family, which is a family as a household living together in a single dwelling unit. And then I suggested that we combine this subdivision piece, which is enclosure containing the sleeping, kitchen, and bathroom facilities designed for and used and held for ready use as permanent residence. And basically what I proposed is combining the two, so that the subdivision rules and our zoning are in parallel. Does that make sense? So it's trying to get at two things. One is, what's the definition of a family? That's what I've proposed here. And then the second is to have our zoning and our subdivision rules be consistent.
So Sarah, does the family definition then go into the definitions?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay, that seems good.
yes.
Thank you.
So, so the action here would be to add family and modify.
We
Comments
also
on-
have we have a definition of household also already in the definitions.
There is not a definition of household in the,
Oh, really? I thought we had one.
nope, I checked.
Hmm.
But I mean, we want to add household too. So any objections to that suggestion?
I think it sounds great. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Height of a building. We went around in this. Gary, I apologize if I went through your emails and I couldn't find, you had said that there was a different definition, and I'm sorry I couldn't find it. So this is the height of the building is the vertical distance from the mean grade of existing ground.
Oh, it's different, Sarah. I had it not too long ago. It was something we had discussed and we had voted on and approved, and it was something I had long talks with the building inspector about. It's the agglomeration of points at every 20-foot intervals, if I remember correctly. Can we just revisit this later? I didn't realize you did not have that language.
Yeah. So let me ask the consensus that I think that Gary is trying to, the definition that Gary has proposed is to have more points along where the building and intersects the ground, particularly because Manchester has such varied topography. Is that correct, Gary?
Yeah, and after a lot of research and a lot of different definitions, the building inspector suggested it is maybe the simplest way to really capture it.
Okay.
I can find the language right now if you want. You want to come back to it later on tonight?
Be great. If you can come back to that, that would be great. I'm gonna put that in green. Thanks. Lot frontage. This came up, not in our meeting, but came up with in a conversation about actually one of our potential A&Rs, that our subdivision regulations and our proposed zoning have slightly different language. I don't think they say much difference. So given that subdivision exists, I would propose that we just go with the one that's in our subdivision rules.
I agree.
I think to the extent we can make things consistent.
No, I agree. That's great.
So is there a
I guess-
consensus?
If we go back to the last one too, I guess the height, did the building inspector bring this up in the many meetings that he attended? I don't remember him saying that, Gary.
Sue's nodding yes.
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 And maybe it was voted before my time, but it has not been voted since my time.
It was voted. I'll find the language. There's a better way to do it, but it's a math formula that made people afraid. But there's an actually very, very good definition that I don't find very difficult, but nonetheless. I'll
Okay.
find the-
Let's stick on this one for a minute, lot frontage. So any objections to using the one that's in the subdivision rules, word for word?
Oh, I agree with you.
Sarah, can I just ask a quick point on this? And it's probably nothing, but just looking at this quickly now. The subdivision regulation says coinciding with the street lines, providing rights of way when we're looking for lot frontage. So it just seemed plural in the subdivision as opposed to singular in the draft.
I agree, Mary. I don't think this is it may be in the subdivision regulations, but I don't think it's a better
Confusing.
definition. I think it's a more confusing definition, and it calls out that it's a potential building site. It might not be. I think it's,
That's true. Subdivisions are a potential building site.
yeah, they have kind of one idea in mind. So I think your previous one is more to the point and less confusing.
Okay. I don't have a strong feeling. It had come up.
I'd just like to point out that where it says where they intersect the street infers that if you have a serpentine shape to the street, all of that distance is part of your frontage. It's not a straight line between side lot lines. So
Yeah,
I
it says,
think,
it says following the angle or curve of the
The
street.
curve of it.
right. So the first one works well for that regard.
Yeah,
Okay, let's, so do I have a consensus that we should just leave it as is?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Restaurant, we had two questions here. I think the issue here was that the part last time we said was 2/3 of its legal capacity are for booths or tables, and it's intended for indoor sales and consumption of food prepared on the premises. So given there are two issues here, Christina had asked in the issues document, I went through that and pulled all those issues out and asked if this includes ghost kitchens. And so we might want to talk about that. And the other issue is how, I think the intention here is to not have drive-throughs, but given, what we went through with COVID and how much takeout there was during that period, and in some places like Dunkin' Donuts or some of our existing facilities, if they were to be replicated, they might have less than 2/3 of their booths. The food that they serve is less than 2/3 of their total food served or something.
How do you determine its capacity?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is based on legal capacity. So that's based on square foot per, and how many people you can serve in that. So that's already something that's out
Exactly,
there.
yeah.
And any restaurant has its capacity based on its square footage. So
So
I
it's not
think
how much your food you're serving. All right, that makes sense.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So this seems okay then? Are we trying to, is there a concern?
I think the question was, should we include language to include a ghost kitchen? If we have another resurgence, can they use a current facility without serving?
Well, without serving, even if they had the capacity to serve, is two different things, right? So, and I think that the pandemic, it should not be the basis for our discussion here.
So-
Tell me what you mean by a ghost kitchen. What is a ghost?
So actually, I'm trying to think of the restaurant in Gloucester that closed. Was it Serenity down near the water? They closed, and actually two gentlemen from
Latitude?
town. Yeah, exactly, Latitude. So they closed down, and two gentlemen from town took over the space, and they're doing meals to go. You can prepare them ahead of time, pick them up. They'll actually deliver within like a 5-mile radius. So, I mean, it's the same idea, but there's no eat in. So they're preparing the food, they're creating organic, meals. They have a different menu every day. I don't know, in my opinion, if we have someone that wants to use a space, I don't see the problem with that if it's.
But that's not a restaurant then. Isn't that use a catering kitchen or a retail meal, ready to go retail sales as opposed to a restaurant? So what
It
we're trying to
doesn't-
do here
yeah.
is, what we're trying to do here is not regulate the restaurant. We're trying to define it.
And I think that other use would be allowed anyway. I think that
Well-
our language is such that it's called a food establishment. So, which is different than a restaurant. A food establishment is more broadly,
So
and I think would include the ghost kitchen as you're defining it, Christina.
yeah, ghost kitchen might be catering, or it might be some,
Well, it's not, because there is a storefront. There's no tables is the difference.
but they could be selling jewelry in that same space. And then the question is a jewelry store allowed? I think the question here is this the definition of a restaurant? And I think you're describing more of a selling food or catering kitchen, which might be a different thing, might or might not be a different thing, I think. Okay, I'm gonna undo the yellow so that we don't forget that.
So
it-
Sarah, I have 2 comments on this one,
Yes, absolutely.
just minor. I'm not sure why we're clarifying to be consumed outdoors in landscape terraces. I don't know if they have to be landscaped. And I think it's singular adjunct, not adjuncts. Adjuncts.
I don't even see the word adjunct.
Oh,
adjunct.
yeah.
Adjunct too.
Yeah,
Excellent.
thank you. I literally was copying this out of, thank you. Okay. As for the definition of restaurant, do we have consensus that this now works for the purposes? And any objections? Okay, great, thank you. Oh, we're in the R's and the S's already. Excellent. The story, we had simply just highlighted this. I think it was in the S's and we were tired. And so we said we'd come back to it. So I think I don't have objections to it, but we had highlighted it. So tell me if you have any discussion, and otherwise we'll move to consensus. Okay, any objections? Mary?
Is this a new definition?
This was in the Mark Bobrowski version that we looked at last time.
Okay.
It's not defined in our existing definition.
I'm
Sarah,
not sure it's actually regulated. It's more height than stories anyway.
Sarah,
Yes,
I found that definition. If I could share screen, I could share.
yeah, hold on, let's finish this.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Why, yep,
I just want, so Chris, to your point, doesn't our current definition say 2.5 stories or 35 feet? So that this would come into play with that. And I don't know that, like, if people have homes that are 2.5 stories, I don't know that they're only 4 feet, the half story. Does that make sense?
It's whichever is low. The 2.5 stories can't exceed 35 feet. If you happen to have big stories, it's still a
Right.
35-foot maximum.
Right, but are you saying in this definition that a half story can only be 4 feet?
So, yeah, because the
No.
ceiling is 7 or 8 feet, so half
Right.
of that is 4. That's how you get there.
right, typically a knee wall.
So you've got the 4 feet on top of the 2/3 of the floor level below it. So it's 4 feet plus the 2/3 of the level below it.
Yeah,
And that mimics the building code definition. It's pretty similar.
And I
Okay.
suggest that we double check this against the building code and if there's a conflict, that we resolve that.
I've done that research in the past, Sarah.
Okay.
It can vary from town to town, whether they have 4 feet or 5 feet. 4 feet's more restrictive. That floor area is included in your calculation.
I'm gonna just say, any objections to saying consensus for now?
sure.
Why don't you say yes for now, unless there's a solid reason to change it?
Well, we're gonna just double check with the building code. I think that's strategic.
So this definition actually came from our height, is what's in our height regulations. We just moved it from there into definitions. So it's what it exists, it's what it is existing in current regulations.
Okay. Great. Okay. Wow, I think we're on the yards. I think this might be the end. A portion of the lot unobstructed artificially from the sky. This, we just, was at the end of that night and we said we would come back to it. So,
So I have a very small nitpick here, which is you should take the comma after lot in that first sentence. Portion of the lot
Yes.
upon which a building is situated. Otherwise, it sounds like you're trying to have the front yard where the building actually is.
All right, so I think with this point, my question was, can you park in your yard? So if you can park in your yard, then it's not unobstructed artificially, right? So this is my question.
Yes, that's right.
You cannot
can-
park in your yard.
You can park in your front yard.
I think
your
it's
drive-
unofficial. Okay, I think
Your
it's,
driveway is going to be in the front yard by definition.
But that's what so can you turn your whole yard into a driveway?
I don't think that's part of the definition of yard, about parking. It's not, yard is not parking. This is just the yard, and it's a
Right.
dimensional portion of the lot.
this isn't about what's allowed in your yard. And I
Yeah.
think, let's assume that this defines your yard when no one's home.
I don't think it's a very elegant definition. From the ground to the sky, I haven't seen that language in other codes. And a court that's strange. What if half of your rear yard is paved, has pavers or something? You might call it a court, or there could be a forecourt or an
Do we have
aftercourt.
do we have a definition of the word court?
It's a strange term to use because whether it's
Yeah.
got pavers in it or whether it's enclosed by wings of the building, it's still going to be part of your backyard, for example, or front yard.
It's not making any statement about the material. It's just
But
the
it-
space not defined by the building.
I'm just trying to guess what they mean, and it's not clear what they mean.
Well, this is we. This is us. These are
Yeah,
us.
I think it might have come from Mark. If he felt, it doesn't seem like it's a state-of-the-art language to me.
It did come from Mark, I recall.
So let's take one at a time. Are we all comfortable with this unobstructed artificially. Even though that we could or couldn't park there, that's separate. I think I'm comfortable with that.
What does artificially mean?
Like with a building structure.
Built.
Does it mean pavers? Does it mean gravel? Is that artificially? What does that mean?
I think
No,
they're
it means-
referring to canopies, like parking open air roof
I
structures.
mean, I don't want to presume. I kind of want to know what this means.
I think
I
that,
don't blame you.
okay, so are unobstructed
we
with
just
a
Call it
structure?
open space.
That's
Seems
better.
another definition of yards, open space.
So I have yard means an open space on the zoning lot, which is unoccupied or unobstructed by any portion of a structure from the ground upward.
That's fine.
It's better.
I like the artificially though. I don't know what it
You like-
means, but I like it.
It means not by a tree.
I would rather
No,
say,
it's not a tree. That's
It's not a
exactly-
I would
tree
rather say
canopy.
it doesn't have built structures is better than unobstructed artificially. I mean, this is about where there's a structure and where there's not a structure.
Right. I agree.
Or you could say unobstructed by any portion of a structure.
So
Yeah.
other communities, and we've
Double
tried to
negative.
talk about this in the last 2 years, actually put a portion of the yard that has to stay not artificial.
But that's a regulation. This is a definition. We want to stick to the what we're trying to do is define this. So I think this is saying yard is not.
It's not a building.
Any portion of the lot which,
I liked artificially. I think it should stay. I just don't know what it means.
I don't like it.
I think we should strike it. I've got another definition here if you want it from
It
planning.
means it's not a tree canopy.
Hold on. Laura, what did you say? You're looking at somebody else's definition.
I'm looking at planning.org. Yards, the open spaces on the same lot with a main building, unoccupied and unobstructed from the ground upward, except as otherwise provided, da, 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 da. Front yard, open space extending the full width of the lot, the depth of which blah, blah, blah. Rear yard, open space extending the full width of the lot, depth of which is blah, blah. Side yard, open space between the main building and the side lot line, etc.
Okay. And where's that from?
Planning.org. I'll put it in the chat.
It seemed to me that as you read that yard, that front rear and side were pretty consistent, but I liked what they said there on the, I can't see the chart.
I think they just substituted, yeah, open space, which makes it more clear that there's not a
So the open space
building
on
in it.
a lot,
The open spaces on the same lot with a main building, comma, unoccupied, and this is the comma is important, unoccupied and unobstructed from the ground upward, except as otherwise provided below.
Not quite, Sarah. It's open space on the
No.
same lot, not on the same building.
Open spaces on the same lot with a main building,
There you go.
right?
Unoccupied and unobstructed.
Constructed from the ground up.
Upward, yep, or up. Except as otherwise provided
What does except as otherwise provided mean?
in this ordinance. And then they go on to say what a front yard is. They
Well, we're
define
doing
front
that.
yard, rear yard, side yard. That's all in the chat, just defining the points outward to which you measure.
Let's take out the court because it's confusing.
Yeah, I would
Take
take
out a
that
fork.
out. I take that whole sentence out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show it to you with simple markup.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
How about,
Did we want to say unobstructed by, how did this one say? It was like unobstructed by a structure. Because this just kind of leaves it open, unobstructed from what?
I don't think we should qualify it anymore. From the ground upward, then you don't get into structures or
They don't
materials.
say what
or
it's- Yeah,
Trees or not trees.
That's true because structure also has a definition.
right.
oddly enough.
Okay, again, our purpose here is to get this to the public. We certainly have time. We can certainly think about this further, but do I have a consensus that we can move ahead with this as described here?
Yes.
Sure.
Moved.
Yeah,
Any
Yes.
objections? Please speak up. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put markup back on so we can see. Okay, so toxic material. At the last meeting, we agreed on any substance or mixture of chemicals as defined by federal or state law. We took out all, this was in there. And then when I was going through things, I was like, oh, section 510 has this bizarre, and it's formatted just like that. Sorry. Just to make it even.
it was a late town meeting.
Sarah?
Yeah.
So in the simplest way here, we could vote to delete section 510.2. And Laura, you had a suggestion that a mixture of chemicals or.
I said, basically, I think that chemicals is limiting it to chemicals is too limiting, just toxic substances. And if we're trying to simplify, if we think that's important, I also looked up definitions. I came up with the same thing that you're seeing. And I said, well, then maybe we just keep that first sentence under the
Oh,
first,
right.
the paragraph.
Yes, I think I agree with that.
Asbestos would fit in.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's what we would have then. Sorry, let me make that the same font size so we can read it.
Should it say or as defined by federal and state law, just in case?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Clarification.
Any substance or mixture of such physical, chemical, or infectious characteristics as to pose a significant actual potential hazard to water supplies or other hazards to human health if such substance or mixture were discharged to land or waters of this town, or as defined by federal or state law. I think
So
that's
comma after town.
yes, thank you.
Sarah,
Okay, and that also, can I just,
Sarah?
wait just 1 second, Gary. The other comment that Christina had made, I believe, was on this one was PFAS. She had said, what about that? So I think that this, in a sort of high level way, as PFAS become regulated, this would include that potentially. You could make a case. So I think it helps us in that comment as well. Okay, Gary, you had something on this topic?
At the end of it, where it says, or as defined by federal, why not say, or defined as toxic or hazardous material by federal or state law? Because it's not clear enough.
No, I think it should be as defined because toxic is actually, there is a subset of these other broader things. Toxics are toxics. There's like threshold quantities and certain listed chemicals. So I think it's better to be broader. So. So for example, wastes are a mixture of substances, and they're called out down here as specific activities, but wastes can be a mixture and they're not raw chemicals. So I don't think, and I think we can vote to delete this 510. I don't think it helps us. So let me take them separately. Do we like this new definition?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Classes are included that they are regulated. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, the second thing is,
The other thing is, I guess, do we want to make sure that
Why don't
Well, Massachusetts is more stringent than federal in this particular situation with the PFAS. We want to make sure that that's clear.
Could change
not-
defined to regulated if you think that's stronger. Or as regulated by federal or state law.
Is defined or regulated?
So the argument then for the PFAS could be that it's not regulated as a federal level, but it is regulated as state. So
So it's an or.
Federal or state law.
I mean, if it's regulated by state law, it's regulated by, it apply, the regulations apply. This is simply a definition.
yeah, no, that's good.
Okay, so then the second question here is, do we want to put section 510(2) on our list of things to delete? And I recommend we do.
Yes, yes, please.
I think it's too much. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any objections to either of those things?
What about the last sentence for the people that do need them?
What this
Like
waste?
that's an out for the Board of Health.
Those gotta be
So-
regulated like dry cleaning fluids. That's probably. it's
Dry
heavily reg-
It's
right?
regulated.
Yeah.
I mean,
Are you thinking there may be things that are not regulated
I think
that this would cover?
so this is a definition. This is, I think that if we had an activist Board of Health or activist Board of Selectmen, that there could be some abuse to that, I think. This isn't about the Board of Health's authority. I think that if there's something injurious to the public health, the Board of Health has authority, I presume. But this is a definition of toxic material, as is 510(2). So I don't think it helps us. Does anybody want to, do we still stand with our consensus prior?
I kind of like the airplane service and repair business.
Yeah,
No, I think we should delete it. I think it's,
okay. All right, thank you. Let's, Sue, just a reminder, we need a zoning map designation. We don't have to resolve that tonight, but just, it's on the list. Trying to keep everything on one list. And then lastly, we got through this and,
I think Sue had a comment.
oh, sorry, Sue.
No, I was just gonna say, what further do you need as a designation?
I need an official way to designate that map, because right now it's
title.
of
Title.
the
I don't
map
want to do that.
Oh, just
Title
the
and
title, a reference.
reference,
Okay,
because it needs to
Thank
go in there because we have an old map reference.
yeah.
Yeah, title of the
I
page.
did ask that question. I have not gotten a response, but thank you.
But it's a reminder. Okay, and then Alan Wilson, I sent him an older version and he asked this question. I don't think it's. So I just made a screenshot here. All decisions shall be made by the majority of the board as constituted. And he said, is as constituted, should it be as elected?
So
But
Laura and I would both say, well, wait a minute, what if you're appointed?
right, that's what I think. I think we should just leave it as is.
I agree.
But
Agreed.
to make sure that we trying to use the process I set up to make sure. Okay, good. Let's any objection to leave as is?
I don't, but is it different number of copies in different places? I thought it was 10 prints of the plan. I could be wrong.
I would think that that should be something that should be in regulations and not in the bylaw, because it can change.
Right, and we don't even want all these days. but
Right.
Yeah,
I think we should scrub that and
I'm
put
gonna
those
that.
types of things in regulations, because you can change it as you want.
Yeah, okay. I want to put it in the other category. Okay, while I'm doing that, I'm going to turn it, let me just, number of copies. Okay. So okay, good. Thank you. We got through a lot. So the next step on 1 through 3 will be to put these changes in, and then I will post them on the website. And I know it's been hard to find all the documents. I think what I'm going to do is make a sort of an archive folder, and sometimes that's important because we've made a bunch of changes and people like to go back. But I will let you know how I organize this, and if anybody has some good ideas, let me know. But I'll probably put a folder for public hearings is, I think, what the way to do it is, a folder in the stuff that says for the public hearings, and then combine everything else in archive with subfolders. The problem is SharePoint is a little challenging when you move things around on folders. Then you can't find things, right? You're nodding, Laura, right?
Oh, well,
Yes,
and
I'm
I find in
nodding.
SharePoint that if I click on the wrong spot in a document, it said that I had changed it or something. I'm like, oh, I didn't touch it.
I know. But it's what we have, and part of the problem is we're all using different versions of Word. That's another problem. But anyway, I think stick with us here. I think when we get a little bit further on, I want to put them all in all these changes in one document, a single document for the public to download as one thing, which we might be pretty close to. Okay, let's talk. Let's stop sharing for a second. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about, thank you for getting through that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the residential cluster and the senior housing, which I know there was a lot of discussion about prior to Laura and me joining the board. And I realized when I went to look on the files that the formatting, when I added the line numbers, and SharePoint doesn't like the line numbers. So I have a clean copy that we can look at. But do you want to pull that up?
Sure, you can pull it up. So the residential conservation cluster was provided by Mark Bobrowski. The current bylaw has got 3 different ways of approving clustered housing. There's the PRD, there's a large scale development, and there's a conservation cluster. So Mark picked bits and pieces of all of them and turned them into a single regulation. And basically what it does essentially is allows waivers for certain setbacks and lot sizes and so forth as a way of saving open space. And the basic density of the overall number of units is the same as it would be for a regular subdivision. So there's no, for a typical conservation cluster, there's no additional units. But there are some bonuses. Up to 20% of the additional units could be provided for either larger amounts of open space or for affordability. So if up to 10% of the units were made affordable with deed restrictions, then there could be an additional up to 20% additional units. The way the law currently is written says that anyone who makes more than, I think, 8 units has to designate 10% of those as affordable.
6.
6 units, I'm sorry, thank you. But Mark says that's essentially illegal because people have the right to build the same number of units. We can't be penalizing them to make them affordable. So he suggested this bonus incentive to gain affordability. So that's what's in the conservation cluster language now. So we can go through it. It's pretty much the same as what's in the laws now. There's some tweaks here and there, which I haven't noted, but I
Yeah,
think
so-
the way,
Can I-
to read, yeah, go ahead.
Let me just
Chris,
tell you that, so I'm pulling up this because it's easier to read. The one that I shared with you for tonight's meeting, I think has the same language, but has been changed to section 9.2 and references the correct, this one is pulled right out of Mark Bobrowski's, I believe.
Yes,
Chris,
yeah,
he
Yep.
sent, this is what Chris emailed you. So, and I it's easier to see because I had line numbers in the other one and it's hard to read them therefore. So the first and then the other thing is that I realized just at 6:20 that the definition, we do not actually have a definition of a residential conservation cluster in our section 2 or section 11 or any other place.
Is it defined in this section 8.2?
It's not defined anywhere in the new draft 8, Mark Bobrowski. So a definition needs to be written unless it exists in the old zoning.
I don't
so-
believe it does, but it might.
So that's an important thing that I don't think we can handle tonight. I think, Mary, you look like you're looking it up, so that'd be good. So I think tonight what I wanted to do was to introduce this and the senior housing and get any big picture, big picture things, and also to get a sense of whether we want to try to include this and the senior housing in the work that we do for the June town meeting. So on those sort of big,
Sarah, this on number 3 here, you have a number 4 in number 3. Is that
that's,
a mistake?
this is just right out of,
Oh,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
numbering is off after you go after 3.
Yep.
And Chris, you said a bonus for extra housing units that are affordable. Wasn't there also a contribution instead to the Affordable Housing Trust as it also a bonus?
That's in the current law, and we could include it in this. I don't think it's written in it now.
I see. It's not there. Okay.
no, I think it was actually. It goes to the affordable house. So that the
Affordable component.
and
here
here
it
will
is.
be granted. Let me make this bigger. Sorry. One page. So the affordable, the subsidized housing and the right of first refusal goes to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah,
Okay.
but there's no cash contribution in lieu of creating the units.
Oh, so there's no, compliance payment or something.
Right.
Yeah,
That's something we may want to consider.
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to incentivize affordable housing.
well, of course, the
Absolutely.
money would go to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Well, the trust is kind
It
of
would.
doing it.
But it does not usually pay for even a fraction of a unit. So
Yeah,
a lot of trusts are trying to get rid of payment in lieu because they end up with money that instead of housing, and it doesn't
Yep.
convert. It doesn't convert easily. So yeah.
Geez, we're giving
Not
a
sure
lot of
it's a
money. The
great-
CPC is giving a lot of money to that trust.
Right.
careful.
Like,
Ron.
they got a lot of money going there. I don't know.
Yeah, we could almost buy a house now.
Well, so, okay.
A lot of money. Anyway, okay, so let's, so I made a note at the top that we need to change the numbering. We know that, and this, I had the other version that is hard to read has that, but also we need to have a definition. Let me ask, is this something we want to advance in June and let the voters decide? The other, that's a question. Let me also say that I think that this bylaw needs to have a delete section, whatever it is, that's the current section of this bylaw.
Yeah, the motion would delete.
Concurrent with that,
Yes.
delete. So this needs to be, okay, Mary, you have your hand up.
Well, did you want to discuss the bylaw, or do you want to discuss if we should?
I'd like to discuss the big picture and any specific big picture things. I think that there is probably a fair amount of editing that needs to happen, and I think that we can't do that. That's not my intent tonight. I don't want to spend the time to do that tonight. I have an idea about how that could happen. So, big
guess-
picture comments.
Yeah, some big picture things would be that when this was last discussed, there was a lot of conversation. So I don't see that anything's actually been incorporated into this yet of what the planning board discussed and feedback from residents. And there was also, we were going to get examples of how this would impact in districts, you know, seeing how it impacts in District D, in the general district, in District A, you know, what, so we were going to have some sort of real life examples to see how this would look and how it would kind of play out. Personally, I have a lot of issues with the way this is currently written. It's a drastic change from what we currently have. We currently require 5 acres. It's going down to twice the district size. So if you look at, say, District D, that's a 12,000 square foot lot. And then you say you could have as many houses as you could have if you had the lot amount for that district. So you could do 4 houses, and then you've got these things that Chris was just mentioning, density bonuses and incentives and things like that. And so with some of these scenarios, I'd like to see, is that 5 houses? Is that 6 houses on 12,000 square feet? It's giving the planning board a lot of say in reducing setbacks, which could drastically affect abutters, I think. There's lots of language I don't understand. It says offers significant amenities to the town, infrastructure improvements, equipment or technical assistance for preservation of land. I don't even know what any of that means. It doesn't follow our normal parking rules that we've established in our parking bylaw. I don't know why we're going to forego that. The contiguous open space, our current bylaw is 60%. This goes down to 20%, and then it can get reduced further. Then it says that if there's open space, it's for public use, I guess. Are people allowed on this land? And then it says in certain instances, the town will start maintaining the land. Like, there's just so much to try to figure out in this.
Well, Mary,
I think it'd be a tough
I
sell.
want to stop something right here. There is no additional density in any of this. If you're allowed 1 unit on 12,000 square feet of land, the conservation cluster is going to allow 1 unit. That's it, 1 unit. It doesn't change the zoning number of units on what's required. All it's saying is that if you've got 5 acres and you're in the C district, then you can put all those, and there's a hill in the middle of the lot, you can put those houses in a cluster around the hill instead of trying to crash into the hill to make a like a shingle hill kind of a thing.
So what's the density bonus?
So then you can get 10% more units. So that means if you're allowed 5,
20%.
20%, I'm sorry, 20% bonus. So if you have 5 units allowed, if you're going to give us more open space or make an affordable unit, you get 1 more.
So that's what I'm
That's the
saying. I'm doing
20%.
an example in District D. So I'm saying that could get you up to 5. And then is this irrelevant to ADUs? Could you do ADUs on top of it? I don't know.
I don't think it's got anything to do with ADU. Yeah, sure, you could, I guess you could have an ADU, sure.
So I'm just saying, I mean, the point was asked, you know, for feedback. And so I
Yep.
am giving my feedback. I think there's a
Well,
lot
I think you're
here.
making I think you're characterizing this as some sort of cramming units into small parcels of land, and that's not what this does. And I think
Chris,
if you, I just want to make that clear to everybody. This is not any kind of, except for the 20% bonus for things that we want, it doesn't make any change in the zoning.
So
Chris,
here's the section.
No, you're putting words in my mouth and that's unfair. I'm
Let's stop,
reading
let's stop.
I was quoting
section
you, I was
by
quoting you.
section of
Okay.
what the bylaw is. And so I'm just trying to be factual. If we had examples, we could discuss and go back and forth with real life examples, but, and I didn't say we're trying to force density. I'm saying in a real life situation, I'm looking at this and that's how I calculate out. If you can calculate out something different for me, I'd love to see the example. So I
Okay,
don't know
so
why there's
let-
an argument if I'm trying to say my concerns with the bylaw.
Okay, so let's stop let's look at the language here. The maximum number of dwelling units in the residential conservation cluster shall not exceed the number of lots which could be reasonably expected to be developed upon the site under conventional plan in full conformance with all zoning, subdivision regulations, etc. So then there's a density bonus of 20% of the maximum number of units. So if there were 5 units allowed, you would be allowed 6 in for the following reasons. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze.
And it's a may, it's a may.
All right.
It
That's a
doesn't,
may,
it's
that's
not a
right.
given.
So, oh, okay, so just in terms of your question about, and Chris's point that this does not allow, this allows up to 20% of additional bonus for additional open space and additional affordable units. So, and at 10%, maximum number of units plus any density bonus shall be restricted in perpetuity. So, so I think you're both right, that there is a additional units than what would be allowed by zoning, but it's for those criteria. Okay.
So I do think it would be helpful if we could get those examples. I don't know if it's Bobrowski, if it's town staff that was going to put together scenarios so we as a board could see it, but also residents could see it.
So can maybe that we could, as a next step, make a table of a couple of different districts and what would be allowed without the residential cluster, what would be allowed with the residential cluster and a density bonus. It seems like it's a pretty simple table.
And I might add, this is already allowed under our current zoning.
So
Well,
this,
Chris,
not-
but you
we're
need
not-
5 acres of land first.
Yeah, you need 5 acres. So so you're talking about in the residential E district, you could have 2 units on 5
Well,
acres.
but that's
So
a big leap from 5 acres to, depending upon what district it is. And so that's why I'm trying to, as we're supposed to, kind of flesh this out. You always
okay,
have to
let's-
look at best case scenarios and worst case scenarios and figure out the middle.
Okay, Laura, comment from you.
I'm in favor of the residential cluster zoning. We may not be able to get there by the June meeting, but I do feel strongly that it deserves talking about. The reason to do it, I'm concerned that a simple table illustrating 5 versus 6 units on some plot of land doesn't illustrate the benefits of it. The decrease in impervious surface, the more efficient use of land, the decrease in sprawl, which is what this thing is all about, which is to preserve more land and more valuable land for ecological purposes or open space recreation, so that the same number of houses are having a smaller footprint on the land, and then there's more land preserved for public benefit, and requiring less roads, less sewage, infrastructure, all of that. And so simply illustrating it with a table is not going to get us there. It's really a spatial consideration. And so perhaps we should all be looking, maybe we should go tour a planned unit development somewhere or get examples and educate ourselves collectively on, the benefits and whatever, and answer any questions there may be about it. I have been looking up definitions. I found one, it's pretty bare bones. I can put in the chat, but I think we could continue looking up definitions if we want to just define it for the time being.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Christina?
So I think the idea that we talked about before is getting some of these examples, and I don't think it's in District E where it's spacious. I think the concern is going to arise in District D, where you have a large lot in District D and you're going to change the fabric of District D with some of these bonuses on a lot that has double the size, and that's not unreasonable. And now we're going to talk about ADUs on top of that. Like you are changing some of these more densely populated areas by changing it from 5 acres to double. So I think seeing worst case scenario is important.
Okay. I'm just going to interrupt for a second. We have several people who've just joined. I just want to make sure you are not looking for a public hearing. That's not what we're doing tonight. We're just we're doing a working session on proposed zoning changes that may come before the town in June. The next public hearing will be next Monday. So, okay. Is that Sue? You have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it definitely is a spatial exercise, and I'm sure there's, I could do it. It wouldn't be elaborate, but I could show a number of, some changes, some clustered development in any of the districts to show what could be developed. I mean, the size of the houses are not going to be known because you won't know until that's proposed. But you could just show some examples of how they might be arranged on a property and therefore maybe see the benefit of those comparatively. But it would basically be a block and outline of a lot scenario. It's not going to be a illustrative design, although maybe others on your board have that capacity. I don't know.
Great. So it's a reasonable thing to sort of do a couple scenarios, is what you're saying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think so.
Ron? You're muted.
I'm sorry, we have the planning board has approved 3 of them. And there's one in District G where Cross Toe used to be, if as an example. There's a cluster in there. There's one at Summer Hill and there's one at Surf Village, all site plan reviewed by the board in my tenure.
All right.
So those are 3 examples.
Gary?
Ron, thanks. That's exactly what we need to hear. Do I understand this correctly that you need at least 5 acres of land to do this?
Currently.
Currently, yes.
Currently, that's huge. I mean, District D will never see that.
No, the proposed changes that. The proposed
Changes it to what?
language.
To what?
To double the size.
Double the required
Double
lot.
the required size. Mhm.
But you also, okay, double the required lot size, but you also would need, if my math is correct, at least legally to be able to put 5 units in. What, correct?
You depending on the size of the lot, whatever the size of the lot could legally support with a subdivision. So if you're in D and you could legally support 1.5 acres and you could create the subdivision legally there, then that's how many units you would have.
But if you're in a district that requires a 1/2 acre per house,
Mhm.
wouldn't you need to have 2.5 acres so that you could put legally 5 units in? If you have any less than that, 20% of it doesn't give you an extra unit.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you never have to go to the max.
I'm not saying you have to, I'm saying you
Right.
couldn't get any benefit out of
Couldn't
this
get a-
unless you could
couldn't get a
legally build.
density bonus.
Correct.
Yeah. Can I, I think there is a benefit for the town in that you could cluster the units close together and have open, as Laura said, if this 5 1/2 acre lots have a hill in the middle, takes by Rock Hill.
Sarah, that's not my question. I'm just trying to iron out the facts first before we talk about the benefits, because there's tons of literature on clustered zoning that's been around for decades.
So my point being there are benefits. You said there are no benefits. Okay,
No,
go on.
I'm saying that-
Sorry, I interrupted you.
The developer would not get 1 extra unit unless he can build legally 5 units. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's a pretty, there aren't that many examples of that in town, although Ron pointed a few out, but to me, that says a lot. You need a lot of land to be able to legally build 5 units.
But Gary, in District D, you only need 6,000 square feet for a 2-family. So you could have 12,000 square feet and have 4 units.
You can do that now,
And-
Mary.
You
You
need
could
to-
subdivide
That might
the lot
preserve
into
open
that.
space and provide
But
trail access,
you're
provide multifamily.
but you're not, and again, I'm not arguing with any of you. I'm just trying to say my stance on this is that then we're also saying we're going to potentially give you density bonuses. We're going to potentially reduce your setbacks. We're potentially reducing your parking requirements, you know, on and on and on. And again, you have to look at, all right, if even, you know, 20% of District D did something like this, that would fundamentally change the look and feel of District B and District B that abuts that. So, you know, cluster developments, I think, are a wonderful thing if you have the right lot size and you are actually getting some open space. But if you're only going to require, what's the percentage? Like it went down from 60% or 20% or something like that. Like for a 12,000 square foot lot, you know, you're talking about 240 square feet or what. I mean, it's not like you're getting a lot of open space. So I think you have to look at the district, and I don't know if it makes sense to do a broad swath over every district.
Okay.
So it is a special permit, is it not?
It is.
So it's always a special permit. So if it didn't make sense, if there wasn't a fragile environment, or if you're not getting a benefit from it, from the design, then the board does not have to approve it. So that's where it gives you flexibility if it makes sense on a lot, but you're not required to give this. This is a not as, you know, by right allowance. So it really allows the board to make that determination and do what's in the best interest of the town.
And I was trying to make the point, you're not talking about a 6 or 12,000 square foot lot. You're talking about a 30,000 square foot lot, 5 lots in District D, or whatever the math works out to.
You only need 12,000 square feet in District D to build 4 houses.
That's the case now, Mary.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You're not going to get a great open space benefit.
So
Okay, let's figure out what our next steps are here. I think tonight the purpose was to introduce it. I would like to move to, but I'm not asking for a motion. I'd like to push this off, and we're gonna review it, and then we're gonna have to have probably have to have a vote about whether or not we're gonna move this forward in June. We don't need to do that tonight, but we had not yet had at least since I've been on the board, had a conversation about it. So unless I think Sue has offered to give a few spatial examples of what this might look like, and I see a value of a little bit of a table with maybe pros and cons as a discussion for this going forward. And then we also need the formatting and the definitions that Laura has put in the chat as a starting place.
So Sarah, could I ask that we get a spatial examples, but we also get number examples? I mean, some people look spatially,
some
some
number
people
examples.
look.
Yeah, so I think that will help clarify what's currently allowed and what the new what this proposed, it's not new, proposed might do. With that, I'd like to jump to the senior housing proposal. Let me first share, if I can find it. We do have a definition, the proposed language from that was drafted does first say we have to define it, and it seems most that the definitions are actually quite important to the proposed senior housing. We do not currently have a senior housing by a section of the bylaw. Is that correct, everybody?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So this definition was suggested in the definitions that were in that draft 8 from Mark Bobrowski. And it looks to me like most of them refer to state law. Hamilton has quite a well-used, I guess I would say, senior housing zoning bylaw. It has been used quite extensively throughout Hamilton. different lot sizes in different availability of land in Hamilton than in Manchester, but nonetheless. So that's what the definition section in our section 2 says. Basically using state law largely as to define long-term care. Senior housing is for people over 55. Continuous a facility is an assisted living continuous care. It sort of lumps them all together. And that there's a section of senior housing laws. So with that, let me go to the senior housing. Sorry to scroll through. Sorry. Don't try to look at this. That's all. That's all. Sorry, let me unshare for a second. I have it here. I had it open, sorry.
Can I just jump in
Sure.
can I jump in while you're doing that? Because those definitions do not line up with the purpose statement in the senior housing. So I think we gotta merge the two, because this says to create home health care, housing, and other supportive services. So I'm not sure how that lines up with that definition you showed.
Okay. Okay, so this is the one that has
You're not sharing. Sarah.
We're seeing your elephant.
oh, sorry. Nice elephant.
It is a nice elephant.
All right. He's very senior. Okay. So the purpose is to provide alternative housing for seniors. And Chris, I'll let you kind of walk us through this.
So we did discuss this with Mark Bobrowski. Essentially, what this would allow would be senior housing by special permit. And all of these are the requirements and design standards. I don't know, I guess we could just go right to questions if people have or comments.
I think we should, one of my comments, sorry to interrupt you, is just that we should strike it from the limited commercial district until such time as we've had the discussion. Well, actually, we should have a discussion about whether this should be allowed in the limited commercial district at this moment. So that would be one piece of this. So, so this gives us a little bit of relief for this sets some some design standards set back from residential dwellings.
And these would be in addition to what would be required under any kind of a special permit in terms of performance standards.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, if we had a larger lot or that would be a single house lot, this would give you the ability to have one of these senior types of housing. You might have collective housing or a nursing facility or by special permit.
Yes. I don't think a single house lot would be large enough, but yes.
Well,
Some single house lots would be.
to me, I'll just tell my, Ron, you want to just speak on this? Oh, you're muted.
Mary had her hand up ahead of me.
You can go, Ron, if you want to.
Go on.
I just saw something on this transportation services. Are we gonna require that if the housing's in town? I mean, is this a must thing? I'm just thinking there may be some, we should maybe melt that down a little. I don't know. It's my thought.
It could be just a taxi service available to people.
I see.
We could also have it be May.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it could be May.
Eric, can you put the definitions that you had, can you put those in the chat? Is that something that you can do easily?
It's kind of a lot. Let me put them back on the screen. Can you see that? Zoom some doesn't like, did the definitions show up?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what, let me just take a picture of it. while you get it up. Right.
So,
So I think go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I think what Hamilton is struggling with is the just plain senior housing. And with the purpose, when we talk about to provide housing which is affordable, I think we need to define that, because I think the development that's being proposed on Chabaco Road is not affordable. It's actually luxury. So I think we need to learn from that lesson if we truly want affordable housing, to make sure that we define that clearly. And I'm not opposed to opening this up to the LCD. I think people would rather, if it's going to be a large scale assisted living facility, that might be the best place for it versus a tear down within a community. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. Those are my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Mary, go ahead.
So hopefully everybody doesn't jump on me for this. So I'm all for senior housing. I do not see any clarity in this bylaw. I can't tell from the purposes. Is this houses? Is this assisted living buildings? Is this apartment buildings? Is this? So when I look at home health care, that's somebody that just comes into the home and helps with either getting meals or getting people to doctor's appointments. That doesn't define a structure. Housing is houses and other supportive services. So I don't know what this defines. Your definition gave an age restriction, but the bylaw doesn't. Is this 62 plus? Is it 55 plus? I have no idea what it is. I agree with Christine with the what's affordable? That could be anything. Other communities that have senior housing bylaw, I've seen that they've said no more than 2 bedrooms, so that it really is for seniors. I've seen that they say master bedroom is on the first floor so that it's conducive to seniors. I've seen that it says outdoor facilities designed for universal access, so they can, for wheelchairs, for walkers, all that kind of stuff. I think, this might be a start, but I don't really even see much to this bylaw. So I would hope that we could go back and give it more clarity.
Laura?
I also picked up on the affordable word. That could be, it just needs further definition, because I think we want to encourage both affordable housing with a capital A and the possibility for senior housing, which if you have an income cutoff, many seniors don't qualify for affordable housing, but they still need housing, which is different from large single family houses and with more care provisions. just a quick response to Mary, you made a lot of good comments about more definitions. I think second floor, limiting to the first floor would create some unintended consequences for sprawl. You can have a lot of elevator served buildings where there are second or even third stories, where you're still talking about basically stacked apartments that can be of a contextual scale. And then I'm looking at this. I mean, we've just talked about the cluster housing, and I wonder if there are some of the things that the residential cluster housing is doing, which this is not doing quite as well yet. It's asking you, for instance, to set aside 10% of the lot area for common open space. That's really not much. So maybe we want to see if there's some way we want to kind of merge these two, but there's a senior housing aspect to a residential cluster. So those are some of the questions I had sort of talking out loud at my first reading of this.
Okay. Any other hands up? I would like to add my own comments on this one, and that I think we would be very well served to have a bylaw that encourages 55 plus or 60 plus housing with and without an affordability component. I think that there, as Laura said, that there are a lot of people who might not qualify, but who have lived in Manchester for a long time, or not that we couldn't restrict it to that. I think the other issue is ownership, whether it's common ownership and maybe the definitions have that. So I would suggest, okay, so that's my comments. Then I have some suggestions about what we do next. But any last comments? I would like to keep Gary.
Gary's got his hand up.
Gary has his hand up.
I agree with a lot of what was said. I think we as a board, it's about time. We don't have the wavelength right now to deal with it, but we need to start developing a consensus as to what our town feels is affordable housing, because I don't think anybody likes the state definition. I would just throw out there, we probably would all like 60% AMI instead of this 80%, which doesn't really help anybody. But we should start developing a consensus if we start using the term affordable housing. And then we also should try to address maybe in a two-tiered or two-layered approach. What about the missing middle? Mary suggested keeping it to 2 bedrooms or less. That starts to go in that direction, or keeping the square footage of them limited and start to make recommendations as to a maximum size of units, because there's a missing middle that rarely gets addressed. And I do think the town doesn't like what the state's definition of affordable housing is. So yeah, more specificity is needed here.
Okay, Sue.
So I would just say that this is not, it doesn't use the term affordable housing. It says housing that is affordable, and that is not, so it's not speaking to affordability in this particular one. Doesn't mean we couldn't, but it isn't. And it often isn't because of services that are provided, and it's very difficult to bundle affordability and services, but not impossible, and bundle them within one structure. But I just wanted to clarify, this is not talking about affordable housing. It's talking about housing that is affordable.
Okay.
I would just like to follow up on that comment, is exactly what is going on in Chabaco Road. And I don't think that's what the people that are at the meetings are talking about. If they knew that this bylaw would be used like this to produce $1 million plus condos, they would not have passed this 5 years ago. So that is my concern. And I think the development that's being proposed on Chabaco Road, there are no services. It's just luxury townhouses. So I'm concerned about that being produced.
Okay.
This is a site plan reviewable, all the proposals, right? We have final say.
Yeah, it's a special permit.
So it's we don't
Can I
like
just
it,
add-
we could say no. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can always say no. And I want to say one thing about the home health care. The reason Mark put that in is because often full-service assisted living facilities and congregate care facilities are centers for home health care programs. So they become the natural place where you can prepare food and have nursing services and so forth. That's the only reason it's in there as an objective.
Can I ask Chris or somebody on the board, like, is this being geared towards like an assisted living facility? Does this look to like having a house that maybe has 6 units in it? I can't figure out what it's targeting.
So it would be, any of those would be possible under the senior housing special permit. But it's a special permit, so we get to decide whether or not we think it's a good project. If
But
it's a
see,
bad
I think
project,
in those different scenarios are vastly different of perhaps how we would approach it from a land use perspective.
of course, and we'll have the right to do that in every case.
Okay, I'd like to bring this discussion to a close, if you don't mind. I'm going to share my screen one more time, and I've been taking some notes as to what we're going to do next. These are proposals. Sorry, it's in red. Make it black so you can see it. So on residential cluster next steps, we have to get some sort of a definition. And Sue said she'd pull together at least some examples. Table and spatial, sorry. And then I think maybe we can come back to it after another, and I think, let's say a reread and discussion. And then on senior housing, here are some of the things we talked about thinking about. Maybe we can take a stab at including them, Chris, and
Sure, yeah, of course. Yeah, they're all good suggestions.
yeah. And we need to have a discussion about the LCD in or out. That's not a thing. That's sort of a yay or nay. I would like to, if somebody, maybe Sue, could you, is she still on? Or Mary, would you like to, oh, you're still here. Could you just pull the, somebody pull the Hamilton bylaw so we can look at it?
Sure.
Or maybe one or two others.
Yep. Yeah.
The merge with the residential cluster goal, goals for open space. That goes in my bulleted list above. So as next steps, does that seem like good things to do?
Yeah.
Yes. When is the deadline?
Well, I think we're going to have another workshop on these two for sure. So I don't know what the answer. I don't have a date for that yet.
Okay.
And then we're going to have to decide if we're ready to move this forward in June. My sense of the board is that senior housing is more likely to move forward. Well, let's do this homework first and then have that discussion.
I think it might be helpful to have Mark in this one because he's had a fair amount of experience. So I think he would help with this discussion. So make sure
And I suggest that everybody read the current residential conservation cluster bylaw that's in effect right now.
So I'm going to suggest that our table have the current no cluster zoning. This table have, by right, current residential cluster, and then the future, and then some spatial examples. I think that's pretty simple to do. Okay. Hearing any other immediate things on these two things? Thank you. Let's last thing on our agenda is
I have actually something to say about Mark Bobrowski. I've been trying to rewrite section 6, which is a very complicated piece of work. It's all about parking and special districts and all kinds of things. What I'd like to do is create a draft and send it to Mark Bobrowski. It also has all the things about what makes a special permit, how we conduct special permits, and the performance standards of what should be in a special permit. So I'd like to draft it, run it by Mark Bobrowski to make sure I'm not doing something crazy, and then send it to everybody for you to think about. Again, it may not be something we can do for this Springtown meeting, but I'd like to give it a shot because the current thing is so messy. So,
Could you do that through Sue if we say to go
sure,
ahead
of
and do
course.
that?
Yeah, I would definitely do it through.
So you're saying that what we produced already, you don't like the framework for it, and you're trying to create a more user-friendly framework?
Yes,
Trying to
yeah,
understand.
exactly. Well, one of there are, in Bobrowski's thing, he's got different performance standards for different things. And I'm trying to lump them all together into a single set of performance standards that can be applied to any project.
Okay, well, it's an exercise. If you're willing to undertake it, I'm certainly willing to.
Well, I may get
Pass it
halfway
by.
through it and decide it's not worth doing. I don't know.
Yeah, that was
Actually,
it was a
it's rather
complicated
mess.
section to put together, but yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you for being willing to do that, Chris. I do think we're making some progress here. Along
Laura
those
has her
same,
hand up.
yeah, section 6, Laura.
No, I'm not section 6. Before we closed out our definitions, Gary had looked up the grading, and I just wondered if we wanted to come back to
I'm gonna
that.
come back to that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. 1 second on that. On that same vein of section 6, there are several things. We've talked about curb cuts and junk cars and stormwater going to general bylaws. But Chris and I have been identifying a few others that are sort of easy. Oh, nothing's easy, easy. So I'm going to take a stab at consolidating all of these general bylaw amendments that we have identified to date, as those seem to be actually, because things like where you can park your boat, for example, in that side yard, there may be a lot of debate about that when we open that Pandora's box, but nonetheless, it kind of belongs in general bylaws, I think, rather than in zoning.
Is signage one of those, would you say, or?
Yeah, signage would be, but
I think it's signage is probably beyond our capacity for June. I think straight moves are within our capacity, at least, but signage should be on our list of things for the future, in my opinion. If somebody wants to take it on, that's great for June. But we have a big agenda for June right now if we do get most of these things together. And then the other is that I hope by the weekend to have some files to Tiffany, maybe sooner than that, for the website. So we have a framework on the website already. So we're making progress there. Okay, Gary.
Where did the language that went onto the website come from?
The language came directly from that document that we shared with the Board of Selectmen. We did circulate that for comments, got some comments, but if you have other comments, please send them to me.
Okay, thanks.
We can improve things. Gary, let's see, can I make you multiple participants? All right, I think you should be able to share, Gary, of the height.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this was the wording we had, that the pre-existing grade is the average of the elevations taken at 20-foot intervals around the perimeter of the proposed building where the building will meet the existing grade. It's short and sweet, and I support it.
So that is actually a definition for pre-existing grade, not height.
Right,
And
but you have to start off with pre-existing grade to know where your height is. It's 35 feet above the pre-existing grade, which is an average dimension, an average elevation.
Okay, so I'm gonna steal a screen back. I've just made a copy of that. I'm gonna steal back from you.
I'll stop sharing, whatever.
Okay, so now maybe we add in, just if we like that, I think that's helpful. And we changed this to pre-existing grade, and then we use the definition for that.
Yes, that's very
that-
simple.
Let me ungreen this so you can see. Okay, so this would be called pre-existing grade, and we, right here,
Well, there should be a separate definition for pre-existing grade, right?
well, or it could just be lumped in here as,
It's typically done separately.
and then we would delete that. And then use this as a pre-existing grade definition.
Right. Yeah, this allows for various building height allowances. Yeah.
Okay, I think that helps us.
However,
Yes.
well, we may be talking about a proposed grade where someone is going to change the grade and then measure the height of the proposed building to the new proposed grade.
It
So if
says
we're
existing,
evaluating a height, we need to know the
it
difference
says
between.
existing grade, Laura. So it's really, it's before they change the site, the topo.
And this actually came about, it's in the, also in the earth removal bylaw, I believe, or something, because there was a town meeting thing about this, because somebody blew off the top of a hill and then then said they're, 35 feet were from the new grade.
Right, but we want to understand that. I mean, there's a difference between existing grade. It's a little bit redundant now, pre-existing grade at the existing ground level. That's a bit redundant and confusing to my mind. But, and I know this is a definition, but
Right.
the height of a 20-story house on a hill is different from a height of a 20-story house after you flatten the hill.
Right, well, what this first sentence should be modified from what you've got, Sarah. It should say the height of a building is the vertical distance measured from the pre-existing grade to the highest point of the roof.
What about just from the grade to the roof? That's how you measure the height of something. It's
No,
not on yesterday's grade. It's
I don't
on,
agree. No. No, it's got to be from pre-existing grade, because you're taking a lot and it's got a severe slope. You have to know how high you can build your building. On Spy Rock Hill, there was a lawsuit because somebody was going to cut off the neighbor's view from across the street. Our definition was inadequate. So they ended up fighting with each other over it, and there's no need for that. So you look at the pre-existing grade, you decide where the average of that is, and you go up 35 feet, and there's no way to vary from that.
So I think that the question is, if you blow the top of a hill off, then are you allowed to build, you reduce the hill by 35 feet. So now your building could be 70 feet.
right. The height of a building is its relationship to the grade that it is sitting upon. So whatever
Right.
that grade is,
Right.
when you're done building the house, that is the height of the house or
But
whatever
you
the
are,
thing is.
you are limited to 2.5 stories though, so.
Right, but
Sure, but how you define grade is not the existing conditions before you did construction and you measure against that. It's the condition of the finished grade to the structure that you're measuring.
I'm sorry, I disagree, because you could bring in fill and you could change all the topography completely. It's
Of
about.
course you can, and then you level off a place and you grade the fill there and you take a building and the building is X number of feet taller than the finished grade.
Yeah, I think we're trying to put two different definitions together here.
Yeah.
I think pre-existing grade is for another use, not to determine the height of a building. I do think the average of the elevations at 20-foot intervals around the perimeter
That's fine.
is how you get to
Right.
that mean grade. But I agree, you can't.
Why don't we just call it grade?
yeah,
Grade, delete existing.
I know.
I don't, to me, this seems so standard. I'm not sure why or having trouble with this. You can't buy a piece of property and bring a whole bunch of fill and raise the height of it and then apply for a permit to put your house on it.
Again, we're
Of
not
course you
regulating,
can.
we're not regulating, we're just defining. And so the
Define
height
it.
of something is relative to its grade. So
Yep.
if you measure the height of a building, it's measured against its finished grade.
Yep.
Not the hill before you blew it off or anything else. It's just a definition. It doesn't make any sense to say pre-existing grade or
And I think
pre-existing.
the more likely thing is that somebody blows the top of a hill off and then they could be allowed the amount they cut off plus 35 feet on, if it was 2.5 stories of big ballrooms, whatever it is. Can I make a suggestion on this one that we go with this change of grade? And I think Gary, I can't delete pre-existing here because it's a screenshot. We continue to, I'll put it on a little bit on the list to think about as we go forward.
Can you,
Here is to get it to the public.
can we bring this back to the building inspector, the verbiage we have here, and have him comment on it?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I wonder if maybe the simple answer is that we add some language to what the height requirements are, not to the definition.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So the actions here are to use this definition, bring to the building inspector, and look at the height requirements to see what the applicability is.
Yeah, I think it's the mean grade that we're defining and not the pre-existing grade in that case.
Yeah, I think it's just the grade. Okay. So
Yeah.
we may keep that in.
Except I think we mean the average and not the mean. Do you agree, Sue? If we're taking
Yes,
20 points and dividing?
Right, it could be the
Average
average
grade.
Right.
Okay.
Although I don't know, I might ask the building inspector if he gets rid of any high valleys or big peaks.
Oh, yeah, that happens. Okay.
Right.
I'm gonna close this out. Thank you, Gary, for that, and we'll continue that. All right, the last thing on our agenda is comments on the
ADU.
comments to DHCD. And so right now, there are two sets of, Christine and Mary both edited the one that I put in the folder for tonight. And Sue and Laura edited the one that I put in the folder for last Monday. So I think we have that, I think it's solvable, but I think that there are a larger set of philosophical distinctions, and I'm not sure we're going to have consensus. Is when I review the comments. Pardon me?
Are we skipping ADUs?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we are going to tonight, but we'll come back to that. Okay, thank you. I didn't have the agenda. Well, Christina, make sure we come back to that. So I looked at the comments. I will put them both in the folder for next Monday. And maybe somebody can try to put them together, but it's deadline is March 31st. And I'm not sure that we have consensus when I look at the two sets of comments. That's mine. So we have philosophically, I think we have two very different approaches to that set of rules. So
I have something to say about this. One of them is that anybody can make comments to the DHCD. There's a little, you go to their site and you can upload your comments. So whether or not the planning board does anything with this individually, I encourage everybody to submit comments.
Yeah. So it's my opinion, I'll tell that we leave it at that. And that you can use the comments that are in there but if somebody wants to make a proposal or take another edit and try to get a majority vote to represent the planning board, that's fine too.
Can I ask who drafted this first version?
Excuse me?
Who drafted this? Who drafted the first version? Who wrote this?
Chris and Sue helped, added some comments. I had suggested that we do it to see if we had consensus on some topics. So the topics, let's see, I have them both open. So the topics that Chris had was maybe Chris, you should say what the topics were. There's a one-size-fits-all philosophy about scale, a formula to about incentive versus carrot versus stick kinds of comments. And then the issue around a definitive number of potential units regardless of current population, 15 units per acre, regardless of the town size. And I think one of the comments is that, and that there was a comment that was my comment that some of the state, which is a comment I will be making into the site, which is when we built the schools, MSBA told us what our populations were going to be, and we could not get reimbursement for larger populations. And now, you know, so that is a true statement for sure. So whether how that actually manifests itself in the application of this zoning is hard for me to understand exactly, because I think it's not as dire as it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing or even something that we can't fairly easily comply with. So so anyway, that's let's see the other.
So Sarah, I have a couple questions, comments. Are we as a town getting any data so we can, as a board, because I would say a large percentage of communities, planning boards are responding, and I think we should attempt to do that as a planning board. I think our community is looking for that, and I think that would be beneficial. But I would like to understand, and maybe this is what's happening tomorrow night at the public forum, that we have actual numbers of what we're dealing with. You know, how many current units do we have within that half mile? I mean, I feel like we're commenting, but you know, we're kind of potentially guessing at some things. I don't know if FinCom's weighing in to do any financial analysis. I mean, that's all offshoots, but I think, you know, I think just because we might not have a consensus doesn't make sense to not do something as a letter to the state.
I looked at the comments. I just think it's going to be a hard letter to write.
I have some
Yeah, Laura.
thoughts
go
when
ahead.
Mary's done.
Go ahead.
Mary, are you done speaking? Okay. Yeah, I added quite a few comments to that. I think if we decide to write something as a board, and we may not get to consensus, I feel strongly that we need to stay away from editorializing. We should not be using words like punishment, threat, you know, something that is being forced upon us. This is not being forced upon us. This is a choice. But I believe completely that this is a question of equity and inclusion. So we allow, as do many towns, single family housing by right. Every kind of multifamily housing requires a special permit. All this is asking us to do is define a district with all the controls that we want to see to promote good development that allows multifamily housing by right. I think it's equity. I think if we don't support that, I will never sign a letter that says we don't support multifamily housing by right. I think it's totally exclusionary. So I believe that we can make this a good thing for our town. I believe that there are financial reasons to strongly consider doing it. I think it would be fiscally irresponsible, frankly, to turn away from it and then turn down the grants and the other state money. But I also just believe it's the right thing to do, and it's an opportunity. We have a historic core of downtown, which is densely developed, which you couldn't build according to current zoning. And this is asking us to take a look at creating contextual development. If you read the FAQs, there's a lot in there about, wanting to put it in the planning board seat to make sure that it fits with the town and the scale and the goals of each town. I think a problem area of it is that 49% of the 175 communities, I think it's something like 79 communities, are too small to be defined by the current capacity. And so it gives you this 750 unit number, which is just a placeholder. It's got an asterisk after it. And we need to understand how that really calculates out. But I do not want to see us come out with a statement that views this as a threat, because I think we'll turn the rest of the town against it. And there go our goals for affordable housing and diversity of housing that we've all said we wanted in the course of the master plan. So sort of stand on the soapbox, but I feel really strongly about this issue.
Very good, Laura. Thank you for saying that. I do want to say something about some statistics here. Every lot that's bigger than 6,000 square feet in the general district is allowed a 3-family house. But there aren't 3-family houses on every lot. So just because it's allowed by zoning doesn't mean it's going to happen. And in fact, it's kind of an indication that zoning is it's not like a master plan where we're going to be creating housing by changing the zoning. The second thing is that those 3 units in every lot in the downtown almost get us to this zoning requirement from the state. So it's not really onerous, it's some tweaking. And I think if we really thought about it and thought about some development parcels in the downtown where some really thoughtfully planned multifamily housing could be built with plenty of parking and a parking ramp or whatever, maybe funded by the state, that we could create a much more vibrant downtown and support the businesses and provide housing for people who are looking for it, with much smaller units and less urban sprawl. So yeah, I think this, as Laura said, it's an opportunity that we should be pursuing, not fighting.
Perhaps we can take the comments that we received from Mary, Christina, Laura, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for taking time, and boil them down to comments about the regulations themselves, not about their merits necessarily, but where they're in conflict potentially with other, with there are a few things that are sort of not terribly common sense about them, as I understand it. And you guys are more further along than I am on this. And simply limit our planning board comments to comments on the regulations, not necessarily their merits, but their clarity or their applicability to small towns. There was somebody made a comment that small towns do not have internal staff or expertise to undertake some of these things. And I don't know who wrote that, but that might be something we could all agree on and find things where we have common agreement, and not comment on what Manchester is going to do about this, because that's premature. So
Sarah, can you just clarify what, I only saw one document. Where were comments posted on another document?
So it was posted for the last meeting. We didn't have time to discuss it. So I will put the 2 versions into, I will put the version from last meeting into tonight's meeting notes. Actually, I'll put them both into next meeting so that we have them, but so that you can see them. Okay.
I would also, because again, I only saw the one, so I don't know where the other one is, but
Somehow when I copied it, it didn't take Laura's comments.
okay. I would say that if planning board members are making a comment, another planning board member can't comment on the comment, that's an open meeting violation. So that's a conversation and that's not allowed.
Okay. Thank you. Can I make a suggestion that maybe Chris and Sue take another stab at the letter to see if there's common elements and that the comments from the planning board focus on the regulations or clarity and not editorializing what it would be like in Manchester.
What
'Cause
we
we
could
don't
do
know.
is summarize, we could summarize people's comments and say, some people said this and some people said that, and put them all together. We could agree on what people said. certainly.
Okay. So I'm going to ask if Chris, maybe you're willing to take another stab at it with,
Yeah, sure.
and then we'll put it in for next meeting. I will clearly label, I think we already have a folder for next meeting. I will clearly label the two versions for you all to look through, and then there will be a new version. Maybe simpler bulleted list of things where there's agreement, and encourage everybody to come tomorrow night and think a little bit more about this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Sarah, I wonder if, just from administrative point of view, this, like many other projects, will go over more than one meeting. So rather than just keep putting it in additional, trying to get everything moved into additional meetings, maybe we should just create a file for
Good idea.
48.
We do have to get it in by the 31st though, is that right? We have a deadline?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes,
good.
let's put it in for next meeting so then it's easy to find. I do think that things that are sorry, and then we can move them into it later. Good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I can do both.
We're gonna try to tackle this at the same one as the public forum on the LCD.
I'm hoping we can get a.
So, yeah,
what
so,
else? I can't imagine we can edit a letter together tonight.
I agree.
So, accessory dwelling units. Thank you, everybody, for your good thoughts on this. Hopefully it's helping us to think through this. Last item on the agenda is the accessory dwelling units. We heard from the Board of Selectmen that there was some addition. We had voted actually to move that version that's on the website to a public hearing, but we heard a number of pretty good questions from the Board of Selectmen, particularly around the number being 20. What about existing units, and how would they be handled? In addition, in the issues document, there were a number of issues just listed. So I combined all those in that notes from the Board of Selectmen document that I posted there. And I think that we don't have time. I want to just bring that to your attention and suggest that we're going to have a workshop on, that's going to have to be for another night. So unless anybody really wants to talk about it tonight. Oh, the other piece that Mary had asked, and I think Sue was in the process of doing, was to take the comments that we heard in the accessory dwelling units discussion from a year or so ago and put them in that same document of comments on the ADU, and then we'll have to make some proposed changes and go through it again. So I think the next step is to take those comments, and maybe Gary and Chris can hammer through another version of that. Or
Maybe Gary. Gary. I'll
Gary.
leave it to Gary.
and
Sarah,
okay,
Sarah,
yes.
What we're thinking of doing is taking those comments and discussing it with the zoning housing study group that we set up, and work out some language that makes sense, and then bring it to the planning board, because that hopefully we'd do everybody's homework for them that way. If things need clarifying, we'll clarify them, and if issues need addressing, we'll propose addressing them. So it'd be better to have something written. So we're gonna try to meet this weekend, and anytime you want to talk about it after that, we could, send the text out, and it can be on SharePoint.
Okay, so you had a group that had met for the original, the ADU, and you're gonna go back to them with these comments.
Yeah, with everything the selectmen said. Some of it, their questions, they just didn't read the law to understand some of it. So maybe some clarifying needs to be made. But yeah, we worked on it for at least a year and a half.
Okay, and so do we have any account of how many accessory dwelling units we currently think we have?
No, because they're not counted. Accessory dwelling units are counted similarly with two-family units. So it's an assessing, all we can use is assessor's number. So we do not have, I would love to, I wish we did, but there are just not the numbers that are credible or reliable in any sense of the word. I've gone around it every which way with assessing department to try to figure out how we could get to the numbers, but I don't see, and she didn't see, that office doesn't see a path forward for figuring that out, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. Gary, make sure that you look at the comments that I shared. There were some in there for ADUs from previous meetings too. So the Excel sheet, it had comments on all of the changes that we were making or that we presented at that workshop, but it also, some of them were, quite a few of them were for the ADUs. So if you could just look at that and take those back to your group as well. I think some of them have been already addressed, but just in case there are some outliers there.
Okay, great. Any other items tonight?
Yeah, I got a couple items. Number one, on our planning website, it says for the February 28th LCD study hearing. So that needs to be changed. And when you open it up, it has the language. And I want to make sure that the public, when they click on that, sees the current language that we're proposing at our hearing for next week. So
Yep.
Can that be changed for and say the March 28th public hearing instead of the February 28th public hearing?
I will
And-
call Tiffany in the morning.
Okay,
That-
and can the
I
language
already talked
be,
to her about that. So, but anyway, if it hasn't been changed yet.
it has not been changed. And so just, I'm going to lock up the agenda Wednesday for next week. So far, we have we'll reconvene on the curb cut and the Greenbrier A&R, which Gary made a comment to us on. I believe the applicant is bringing in a lawyer. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what I had heard. And then we have the public.
Sorry, did you say Wednesday? This is a Wednesday hearing? I heard Wednesday.
No, next Monday. It'll be
Monday, okay.
Monday, the
Pardon.
28th. This
I
is all
heard
the
Wednesday.
28th.
Okay,
And
thank
so
you.
then at 7, we'll have the public hearing, which will, our job is to listen to the public. And then I will close the public hearing after all the comments are heard. And then we will vote any changes that we hear from the public that night. I'm expecting to do that. And then any extra time we have after that, hopefully we'll continue this lively discussion, Sarah, on any small items we can close up, continuing on this recodification effort. So that's kind of what I have for the agenda. Not very heavy next week, except for the public hearing.
Okay, what we might do is a similar issues thing on section 4. I think we've
Okay.
got a few little things that we can kind of close up on those.
Okay, and then you would want to, I noticed you had written, you want to schedule some more bonus meetings ahead, and I guess we'll play that by ear.
Yeah, I have to look at the calendar. We had originally said to have a public hearing on this on April 11th and 12th, and Chris and I felt like it should probably be soon after the town meeting to not avoid too much confusion. So we're going to redo the dates for that. So,
Yeah, we're also going to screw up the Board of Appeals if we're not careful.
right.
Okay. I see that Mary has her hand up, and so does Sue. Mary?
Thanks. I just had a question. Chris put an email in the folder saying that cell signaling had presented to FinCom, so we didn't need to. I was concerned about that. I think the planning board, if we're looking for the FinCom input, should do it as a planning board, not as an applicant giving information to them.
Did you attend the FinCom meeting?
I got there at the tail end of that presentation. I didn't get on till, I don't know, 8 o'clock or something.
Okay.
So I
you-
heard part of it, but not all of it.
Okay, will you have a report for us at our next meeting or no?
Just on the part that I was there, yeah.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
think I agree with you,
And-
Mary. I agree with you, Mary. We'll circle
Okay.
back with them.
And Miss Brown.
I just want to make sure that I've got some dates, even if they're tentative and they may be, so that we can get Mark to the meetings that he can be helpful at. So I might bug you, Sarah, to see, to get a tentative plan out there.
Okay, we'll get your dates as soon as we post them on the calendar, maybe. Mr. Gilbert.
I asked the Board of Selectmen, I'm not sure if I asked Planning Board, but I asked the Board of Selectmen if they could have town council look at which of our bylaw changes would actually interface with the zoning board of appeals. It's only a small amount of issues, I think, but is there any movement on that? Or because, you know, it could mean some applications could be held up, but not all their applications. And I wanted to see town council to weigh in on that. And the other thing was for Sue, did Bobrowski get back to us with the second round of responses on the questions about A&Rs?
I haven't seen that second round, so let me remind him. Let me remind him.
What was the first round? I'm really confused here. Are we not going through the chair and asking for advice? I'm a little lost.
Could you,
We
Gary,
talked-
could you send me an email on what you just said? What you wanted to follow up on?
We talked about it at a previous meeting and agreed to send some questions about A&Rs to Mark. He gave some responses. A little bit of it was not completely crystal clear, so I commented on his comments, and Sue's doing the go-between, and we'll report back when we're done, when it's more clear. So
Yeah, and then on the question of going to town council, I think we have to go through Ron on that. And we don't yet know exactly what we're bringing in June. So I think it's premature to ask the question about which ones affect the ZBA. And I think town council generally will review warrant articles as well. So I think we should figure out soon, and I think we're getting close to figuring out what our total package is going to be for June, and then we can, through Ron, ask any questions of council. And there may be a collection of questions that we want to have them review. So.
Well,
Yeah,
I-
they changed their policy on town council, the selectmen. So, you know, we can send out questions to me. I'll get them to Greg, and Greg can contact. We don't have to get any approval from the selectmen anymore. We can just go to Greg, and Greg can either answer them if he knows the answer or go to town council. That's the new
But we
policy.
should consolidate any questions.
Correct.
The questions I was
Correct. Let's
referring
make
to, Sarah, were not really, I wasn't speaking on behalf of the board. I was just saying the selectmen should be concerned. They should ask town council on behalf of the zoning board. It doesn't have anything to do with us, really. It's
They
like,
don't have draft zoning changes yet to respond to that.
Good point.
I have a question. I think there was a memo about the A&R, so I would like to see what's circulating, that's being tossed back and forth. So if you could share that with the board, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem.
And the last thing, we got a note back from the Attorney General. Is Sharon still on?
Yes.
Yes, so they have tentatively blessed the zoning, but because we didn't send it to the regional planning
And
DHCD, that there is a 21-day waiting period for them to make comments. If they don't make comments, the thing is certified. So that would be April, I think, Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, like April 11th?
I
Something
guess
like that.
I'll count out the 21 days, but we also have to, on the Form 299, it has to be posted. So I will speak with Diane in the morning and her and I will get together to post the warrant and everything from that meeting. It has to be posted for 14 days.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the latest stuff.
So
that I have.
I had a panic attack about that this weekend, but I checked and our proposed LCD changes are independent of the renumbering that we did in November. So regardless.
Well, it looks like we're gonna make it in time anyway, but
Yeah, but
it's
it
good.
doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And I got a form from where I worked before that was very good, that lists everywhere that the hearing notice went to, and that goes in with all of the information that goes to the Attorney General's office. So this won't happen again.
Right.
Great. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Mary.
Just jumping around, but Sarah, you had mentioned the earth removal bylaw. Do we have a list of what's in for June and what's not? Like, so the earth removal is not, I was trying to,
The memo that I did for last week is the best list. And I do actually print that out and I was gonna wave it, demonstrate, but you get the idea. I actually have my own version that I've been updating. So I plan to update it for myself and can share that for you next Monday, the list of where we are, because I think we have some decisions on some of these things. So, and then we
is your
just,
list just what we're including? I don't see what we're excluding.
it's a list of what we're working on.
Okay, so anything else we're saying we're not bringing forth in
Well,
June?
there's another section that I will update. I'll update it for you, for all of us, for the next, I'll update that memo for the next meeting. I think my goal is to try to keep that memo for our regular meetings updated, so everybody knows where we are on moving things forward, on reviewing them, so.
Okay, thanks.
Special thanks to Sarah and Chris and Gary and all of you for tonight.
Everybody did a good
Great.
job viewing it.
Sam, Chris.
Thank you.
That'll work.
Thank you all.
All right, thank
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
Probably, yeah, right in there.
Ms. Creighton,
yes.
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Olney,
Yes.
Ms. Tenney,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. See you next week.
All right,
Bye.
I know it's tomorrow
Thank you,
night.
Fran.
Bye.
See you tomorrow night. Sorry. And at the curb cut, right, curb cut and.
And at the
selectmen.
curb cut, right?
Right,
double
forgot all that.
Laura's gonna may not make it.
I think I'll be able to make, I'm trying to shift things around. I'll try to make the curb cut.
Okay. Get to see
Thank
each
you.
other in the
I love a
flesh.
good
See you
curb
all.
Okay. Bye.
See you. Bye.